Hello and welcome to the Business Spotlight interview series. I'm your host, Barrett McDonald. I'm joined today by David Rafuse, owner of Blended Athletics. David, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to kick things off a little bit about who you are and what got you started on your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so you've already started off with my name. I am from Nova Scotia originally. I went to St. FX. After school, I moved to Vancouver, spent 5 years doing sales, pharmaceutical sales in Vancouver. And then in 2013, moved back and started my first business, Blended Athletics. And I'm chasing after the title of being a serial entrepreneur, but I'm not quite there. So I'm just in the midst of starting my third business. Uh, and probably 5, 6 years ago, I started a marketing company with my wife, and we sold that last year. And then we started a technology company this past year, which we're just starting to get off the ground.
That's awesome. Well, no end in sight then, right? Just
That's
keep
the
on going.
goal.
If you keep moving, don't gather any moss, as the old saying goes, right?
Exactly.
So what would you say have been your biggest learnings as an employer since you began in business?
Uh, well, it's an interesting question because sitting now 10, almost 11 years into starting my first business, I would like to say that starting from square one, it would be building a strong foundation team. But I mean, the reality of it is at that point in time, building a team was unrealistic because I didn't have the funds to do so. And I think that this is the reality for most people when they're starting off on their first business is that your ability to scale and to build a team that you maybe desire, you're limited until you really get the ball rolling. And one of the nice things about starting a business, and I think most serial entrepreneurs are sort of addicted to this aspect of business. When you start from scratch, there's no systems, there's no playbook, there's no game plan really. I mean, as much as you want to plan and build out projections, that stuff goes totally so.
Sideways.
Yeah, sideways. So it's gone as soon as the ball starts rolling. And that's a addicting part of starting a business. I think for at least someone like myself, that's something that is exciting. It kind of gets your blood going and makes you want to do it again, even once you've gone through all the struggles, because it's hard. There's no question about it. Like that process of starting a business from scratch is tough, and has lots of challenges, but it's also probably the same addiction that gamblers or addicts have. And you just keep going back, wanting to do it again and again and again. So, building those strategies, those processes, those systems yourself is so valuable at the forefront because then once you start scaling it and you start backfilling some of those roles and those and systems, you know what it should look like. And so, as much as I want to sit here and tell you is like, I would, I wish I could have built the team that I have today 10 years ago. The reality of it is that each and every process that I feel as though I've gone through was the necessary process in my own journey. And I don't think I take any of it back.
Yeah, it's definitely not one path for everybody. It's a very windy, twisty, ups and downs and all over the place. So it's fun that you've learned that and you can share that story with others.
It's true.
Absolutely. So when you're looking for those quality employees, what qualities do you look for within them? And what are some of the things you do to foster that positive work environment?
So for myself, this is one of my more probably my weaknesses. I feel as though I have a pretty good eye at finding talent. But I also get connected on a personal level too quickly. And I feel as though I need to fix things. And one of the things that I've learned a lot over the last 10 years is like, if it's not working and it's broken, then you need to fire fast. And
Right.
I find that very challenging because I get connected and think, oh my gosh, I can help bear it. And I keep going down this road because I always reflect back to like, well, it's not working for him. He's struggling because I haven't trained him properly or I haven't given him the resources that he needs. And so I get connected into kind of falling back on myself being the issue rather than it just being not a great fit. However, we've been really lucky over the years to build fantastic teams at all of our companies. And I just not the one to do with the firing, I'd say. We but one of the things that I think would be unique that anyone who's listening to this would take value from is in all three companies, the very first thing that we do when we hire someone is we go through a personality test, we go through the love languages, and we also go through the five dysfunctions of a team. And the reason for that is that as soon as we know and understand each other's personalities, it provides us the ability to communicate better and get shit done.
Right.
B, love languages seems a little bit weird considering that it's more of a relationship-based test than it is anything else. However, there's a lot of similarities that come into play that we see value in, and being able to utilize those qualities or understandings brings similar value to understanding people's personalities. And then number three, the five dysfunctions, which it's a great book and it's a really fast read for anyone who owns and runs a company. The foundation of that entire structure lies on trust, which I think is quite obvious, that you need to trust each other, whether it's employee, employer. What's unique and I think separates it from not going through this process is the next phase after trust is conflict. And in a
Right.
lot of, especially for myself at least, and I was very lucky to be able to go through a few fantastic companies, including Johnson and Johnson, which is, a global company. But what's unique about understanding conflict, which is the next part of this pyramid that the five dysfunctions uses, and having your team understand conflict, is that in most corporations or work environments, conflict is something that is often avoided. And when you avoid conflict, it continues to build in the background until someone gets so frustrated that the relationship just no longer works.
Yeah.
And by understanding each other's personalities, love languages, and then ensuring that everyone is on the same page with regards to conflict, it allows you as a team to then hold each other accountable, hold each other committed to the results that as a company you're trying to achieve.
That's fantastic insight and a great start to any company. I think that foundation is pretty solid. It's one of the things that we try to do at Action Coach, is build that out. So I applaud you for doing that. So what would you say are some of the common misconceptions you've come across about being a business owner, and what do you do to combat those?
That every business owner is rich and has all the time in the world and a flexible schedule. And I think that to a certain extent, we all go into business for ourselves with some of those in mind. However, I was fortunate enough, I never knew my grandfather. My grandfather was an entrepreneur and a very well-known entrepreneur. Uh, and growing up, I would walk or meet people in the street when I was with my mom, and it was her father. And they would always, growing up, tell me stories about having worked for my grandfather. And it was very evident that he cared about his employees at all levels. And he owned a grocery store back in the day. And I've talked to people who bagged groceries at his grocery store that used to rave about the conversations that they used to have with my grandfather as the owner of, multiple businesses. But he always made the time to come up, say hi, see how things were going, remember, their significant other's name, their kids, what they did, always took the time to be able to do that. So to kind of try to go full circle here and bring this back to some misconceptions, is that I still today believe that building relationships at a foundational level with your employees, with your customers, um, at least in the size businesses that I've been involved in, is very, very important. And to be fair, is like, you read, I'm sure you've read some of these, Barrett, is like you read about entrepreneurs, Elon Musk or Bill Gates or, any of these really high famous entrepreneurs. And there's stories there that both good and bad that go back to this idea of like being able to connect with people and being important with regards to not just how the business functions, but your own personal legacy and how people think about you when it's all over. And I think that misconception of like it doesn't matter for many is just wrong.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, getting to know people, you get the most out of them. It goes back to your 3 steps for what you do when you're onboarding an employee and going through that routine. It all speaks to that. So, way to keep the continuity going. Very well done. So, what do you attribute your growth to in business?
Just surviving. Uh, Honestly, that's actually one of the like that's a huge part of growth is if you can out survive your competition. Because I mean, we know the stats of what the likelihood of a business surviving 5, 10+ years is. And so many small businesses close in the first year, in the first 2 years, in the first five, first 10 years, that if you can just make it that long, it just happens to come with slow, continuous growth year over year. And that's one of the things, Blended's the business that we've had the longest. And that's something that we see when we look at our numbers, our annual numbers. We've been lucky enough, minus COVID, considering the fact that we're a gym and we were closed for 7 months. But we've been grateful to have double-digit growth year after year since year one. And obviously from year one to year two is pretty easy to have double digit growth.
Right.
But as you get into years, 9, 10, 11, those numbers become more and more challenging. But what you find, and we went through this process yesterday, actually, which is interesting to kind of bring up is, within our CRM software, we have thousands of leads. And, that's something that makes doing business for us very different from, let's say, a gym that's opening tomorrow that starts off with 0 leads. We get to contact leads that we received in 2014, 2015, 2016, and continue to work those leads because you never really know when someone's ready to buy. And if you're not working those leads, then that even old leads, 5, 10-year-old leads, is you're missing out on opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, recycling like you said, people aren't always ready at the time you're ready to sell, but just keeping them in. They had an interest to get into the system, so just keep them going.
Yeah.
So I really like that approach. So you kind of touched on it earlier about starting from square one again in business, but let's circle back to that question. And if you were to start all over again with blended athletics, what would you do differently the next time around?
So I'll tell you one big mistake that I made. This was the single biggest mistake that I've made in business, I'd say today. In 2015, we did our first expansion of Blended. And at the time, so when I opened Blended with my wife, we had we had one employee. Okay. 6,000 square feet, 0 clients on day one. And we started building quite literally from scratch. In 2015, things were going really well. And we had an opportunity to expand in our current location and add an additional 3,600 square feet. And at the time, I mean, we were 27, so we were like, let's do this. Like, let's go. Let's start growing this even faster. And we still had no money, and we still only had 4 employees at the time. And so we were young. I thought, hey, I'm going to manage this expansion myself to save on having a project manager facilitate it for us. The expansion took 3 months, and I would close up the gym at 9 o'clock at night, and I would even paint. I would get my hands involved in painting walls from 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock, and then go home, sleep for 5 hours, come back and open up the gym for 5 a.m. Burnt out for sure. But it was the biggest mistake, not because I was tired. There's lots of time that I can find to sleep and recover from it, especially at that age. Probably not now. But the problem was that I stopped working our sales funnel. And
Right.
when we finished the expansion and we made the public announcement of this beautiful new space that we had opened, planning on ideally doubling our membership as it was that day in order to even like survive, no one walked through the door. And that was the single scariest moment because coming from sales, I knew what I'd done. As soon as I did it, and I got to the point of it was too late. I mean, I had to start building the funnel again from scratch, and it was too late at that point. And the thing that saved us was we out survived another gym, and we were in trouble, like in every way. And then one weekend, someone walked in the door and they were like, I need a membership. My gym just closed down. And I was like, oh my God. And that week, 30 new people walked through the door. And that single moment was the moment where we were like, okay, we're good.
Yep, we're gonna make it.
We're gonna make it. We're gonna survive. But that mistake of taking on a role that eliminated the only way for our business to survive, which was that funnel, our sales funnel, taking that away was the biggest mistake that I had made, and I just so happened to get lucky.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you were adrift at sea, and then all of a sudden you saw land and you had a direction to go to. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. And an unfortunate but successful learning experience,
Well, it
which is
kind of
really
ties
good.
back into that earlier kind of question and comment around out surviving and that growth. And that was actually interesting enough, just like one example of how we've grown is like out surviving competition. But in that circumstance, not just grown, but survived.
Yeah, absolutely, which is awesome. So you think about how busy everything is. What are some of the tricks and stuff you use? Like, how do you balance the demands of running a business and trying to run a personal life as well?
I still struggle with that. Um, Early in the earlier days, it was impossible, and it really affected my relationship with my wife, with my family, friends. Um, but at the same time, is if you're going into business, and I'm part of some masterminds and different groups like that, so I have the opportunity to talk to a lot of other entrepreneurs on a regular basis, and there's a concept that's been shared over the years of one life with me. And for a lot of business owners, personal and business, it's one. And for myself and my wife, we work together. We have no kids, and it is our life. So, the idea of balancing personal and professional life for us, to be fair, really doesn't exist.
Yeah, you're more like, let's just go for dinner rather than staying in and eating dinner. And that's kind of your pivot.
Yeah, I mean, so to be fair, my wife loves traveling. And now, especially in the last number of years, when we've gotten rid of the marketing company and had, more success with Blended, um, we got into a point where we've been able to travel more. And when we travel, she brings her laptop, her phone, and I completely disconnect. She is much better at disconnecting, even though like the technology's there. And if there's an emergency, everyone knows that they have to contact Kimberly, and she'll either deal with it or she'll tell me that there's an emergency. And we were gone and we were in Mexico last year as an example, and there was a flood in the gym. Like we were doing some construction in the gym while we were gone, and the plumber hit a live pipe, and we had over an inch of water in the gym within 30 minutes, and no one knew where the water shutoff was. And so they called Kimberly, and I was actually the only one that knew where the water shutoff was. So fortunately, that was a scenario where it kind of pulled us out of our vacation. But for the most part, vacationing is the one time that we really do try to disconnect professionally from our personal life.
And I'm sure the first thing you did when you get back was draw some arrows on the wall to where the water shut off was, so it wouldn't happen
Smart,
again.
smart man. Yeah, I'm not the only
Absolutely.
one who knows.
Yeah. That's awesome. And an unfortunate thing. I mean, those are fun. Those are funny stories in hindsight, right? You're like, of all the things that I tell someone where it was during construction, was the water shut off.
To be fair, it did highlight how great my team is, as both Kimberly and I are gone. And, for any business, a flood like that is not just like oh, we turned it off, we're done. But the team was able to, pull together, get everything cleaned up, bring in like commercial grade dehumidifiers. They problem solved that issue, minus the fact that they had no idea where the water shutoff was. They problem solved that themselves, and it was a testament to how amazing that team really is.
That's awesome. And a fantastic story to live on forever. So, last kind of question is for someone watching the series at home, what's a piece of advice that you have for them if they're thinking about going on an entrepreneurial journey?
Uh, you need to be all in. And so I think that you can do it at any point in your life. And I hate to say that, major life situations like having kids or, I mean, having kids, I assume would be the big one where there's a massive dedication that is obviously needed. I think there's lots of success stories out there when people open up businesses when they have young kids, but I mean, personally, I don't have them, so I can't relate in that regard. But I know that in all scenarios, you've got to be all in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's it. Don't underestimate the amount of time it takes, but there can be light at the end of the tunnel with the right steps and processes built along the way. So
That's the
I thank
goal.
you very much for your time today, David. It was awesome speaking to you and everyone watching at home. I hope to see you on our next episode.
Fantastic. Thank you.